I want you to understand that we've got a federal government who believes that the financial mess that our country is in, because we have spent money we didn't have and borrowed money we could not pay back, their answer is, let's spend more money that we don't have and borrow even more money that even our grandchildren won't be able to make enough to pay back. That's why we're in this room tonight. Because we understand that it's not enough to be angry at what they have done. We need to give them the ideas on what should be done to fix the problem. And the fair tax is the fix for what's wrong. I am glad that all across America, throughout the day, on this April 15th, people have engaged in tea parties from one end of this country to the other. It's been interesting to me that the mainstream media has tried desperately to ignore what's happening out there with the heart and soul of American people. They give more attention to 6 or 7 women dressed in pink garb protesting the war than they will to hundreds of thousands of ordinary American families who are just saying, enough is enough, I'm fed up, and I want to see our government start listening to us rather than us having to listen to them. And that's why all across this country, the Tea Parties have rallied people. And in many cases, the Tea Parties have brought together people who are angry. They're just mad. I watched some interviews this afternoon. I was watching my friend Neil Cavuto talking to some people out in California, and Glenn Beck talking to people in San Antonio. A little later, Sean Hannity, one of my other Fox colleagues, will be talking from Atlanta. And it's interesting, a lot of people who attend the rallies, they're angry, and I understand. I am too. But here's what I want to make sure that we realize that we've got to leave here with tonight. It is not enough just to be mad at what's wrong, unless we have an idea of what could be right and that would fix it. Anger is a great thing because it motivates us. It causes us to get up and sort of get off our chairs and do something significant. But anger needs to be challenged and channeled. You know, even Jesus did get angry. But he got angry at the right thing, at the right time, for the right purpose, and in the right way. And I would say to every one of my fellow Americans, it's good that we're angry. But we need to be mad at the right thing at the right time for the right reason. And then we need to channel that anger into something positive. And that's why I am an unabashed, unapologetic, unmitigated supporter of the fair tax, because I know that if we had the fair tax, it would be transformational in our economy, because for the first time, our tax system would be transparent, something that today across America, a lot of people do not yet fully understand. I'll tell you what happened today. People put checks in envelopes and sent them off to the IRS, and some of them even celebrated saying, guess what? We're going to get $300 back. And I want to say to them, excuse me, do you know how much you paid in during the year? We're going to get $300 back, like the government is doing you a favor. They've kept thousands of your dollars all year long, paid you not one penny of interest. They have used your money, they've floated it, they've made money off of it and off of you, and they're not giving you anything. They're letting you keep a pittance of what they already took out of your paycheck, and the bad thing is you never even saw it. That's your money. Shouldn't be theirs to start with, ought to be yours to start with, and you pay tax on it when you buy something, not because you went out and worked your guts out today at the job. Great job. And I want to make sure people understand something. The fair tax is not for rich people. It's good for rich people. It's for everybody. Let me tell you why. I was in New Hampshire campaigning. I was at a machine shop. I'll never forget this because it was one of the moments in which the whole idea of the fair tax became so much a part of what I believe we needed to do to change this country. Guy at the machine shop was telling me about a college-age daughter of his who was in graduate school at Cornell University. He said, my daughter's at Cornell in grad school and it costs $50,000 a year for her to be there. My first reaction was, thank you, God, that my daughter is not in grad school at Cornell. And then he said, I'm trying to help my daughter so she won't be in a huge debt when she gets out of grad school. So I've taken on a second shift here at the machine shop. Now this guy's high school educated, never been to college. He wants his daughter to do better than himself. And so he's taking on now a second shift, working 16 instead of 8 hours a day, twice as hard as he was before. He says to me, when I started working the second shift, I thought I was going to make twice as much money. But it put me in a new tax bracket. And it turns out that a big chunk of what I'm making in the second shift, I'm not even keeping. And I can't help my daughter with it because the government has taken it from me right out of my check before it ever gets to me. And he said, tell me that's fair. I said, it isn't fair. I hated to tell him this, but the truth is, it wasn't all that should bother him. Because if he took that money and invested it and made money, we taxed the investment. If he bought and sold something, had a capital gain, we taxed that. If he saved it, we taxed the savings. In the stock market, we taxed the dividends. If he got so absolutely worn out from the hard work, working twice as hard, and died, we taxed the inheritance. I mean, we're going to get this guy one way or the other. And I told him, I said, sir, there's one way that you could get the government off your back and get some help for your daughter, and here's how it works. Quit both shifts, go home, watch ESPN at home every day, sit on your fanny, and then your daughter will qualify for a whole lot of help from the government. They will then help you, but not as long as you're working twice as hard. Now, can anybody in America, Democrat or Republican, look me in the eye and tell me that makes one lick of sense? No, nobody can tell me that, because even to the craziest left-wing lunatic, that makes no sense whatsoever. And the reason that I'm a fair tax guy is because I was campaigning and somebody kept saying to me, you support fair tax? I said, I believe all tax ought to be fair. I thought the flat tax would be a good way to go. And I said, well, I like the flat tax. And they said, well, no, I'm talking about the fair tax. And I didn't know what they were talking about. And I kept hearing this over and over. And finally, some guy in southwest Iowa handed me a book, the Fair Tax book by Neil Bortz and Congressman Linder, and said, here, read the book. You need to know what this is. So the next day on an airplane, I read the book. And I was so stunned by how simple, how absolutely brilliant it was. I read it a second time to make sure I didn't miss something. And after that, I said, you know what? The fair tax is a flat tax, but it's a better approach, because it does not penalize that which we ought to reward and reward that which we ought to penalize. And the reason that I am here is the same reason you're here. This makes a whole lot of sense. And that's exactly why Washington hasn't done it yet. Now, I hear all the time people patronize me and say, well, I like the fair tax. It's a great idea, but it'll never pass, and that's why I'm not supporting it. Isn't that a dumb argument? Well, first of all, see, my attitude is this. There are 535 members of Congress, 435 in the House, 100 in the Senate, and we just keep going to them and say, you either pass the fair tax, or we're going to fire your backside and get somebody in there who will pass the fair tax. I truly believe that every single person is here today. Not so much for yourself. Let's talk about this for a minute, folks. It's not about you. It's about your kids. It's about your grandkids. It's about the future of America. Some of us are old enough that government's going to maybe make us uncomfortable, but they won't ruin our lives. But some of us are looking down the road and thinking, what a difference. Because our parents' generation, that we call the greatest generation, were called that because they were willing to sacrifice themselves in order to give us a better life than they ever dreamed. And what a shame. What a shame if we look behind us and we see our parents making sacrifices to give us a better life, and we in turn respond by looking out in the future and making sure that we try to punt the pain from ourselves and put it all on our children.